For some 40 years, hundreds, perhaps thousands of young women have been drugged, raped, and beaten across dozens of UK cities by men belonging to so-called grooming gangs.
They're gangs of men who groom young teenage girls and abuse them for sex and end up, in some cases, imprisoning them and passing them around lots of other guys and lots of other people, even selling them for sex. And these girls get abused for many years.
The problem not only continues, it's getting worse. December 2020, British authorities charged 32 men in a grooming gang with 200 sexual exploitation offenses against 8 girls, some as young as 13.
Arrests and prosecutions have happened around 40 different cities across the country. In one or two cities, we know there's at least 1,000 victims. So that's many thousands of victims, and many of these victims have been raped and abused by more than one abuser as well. So the scale of the problem is massive.
Most perpetrators convicted so far are reportedly Muslim. The majority of their victims are white.
My story started over 20 years ago. I was targeted in my late teens.
At the time, Ella Hill, not her real name, was living in Rotherham, north of London, when targeted by a Pakistani Muslim grooming gang and
raped, beaten, strangled, suffocated, tortured, almost drowned to death, suffocated to death, really, really brutally harmed, covered in bruises.
Hill said it was made clear to her by her attackers that because she was white, a non-Muslim, a virgin, and didn't dress modestly, that she deserved to be punished. She was reportedly raped over 100 times and endured what she says was religiously sanctioned sexual violence and torture.
People need to hear it from survivors that these are racially and religiously aggravated crimes. That when I was being beaten, I was being called a white slag, a white whore, a white that over and over again, the references to my whiteness was always at the forefront of my perpetrator's mind, and that was always linked in with religion and his idea of what a good Muslim was and a bad non-Muslim was.
She escaped a year later, becoming part of the UK's largest ever child sexual abuse investigation. More than 20 years later, these same assaults in European cities are only getting worse. Gordon, experts say that at the core of this is an Islamic view that European women are neither pure nor modest, that they are therefore immoral and deserve this kind of horrific treatment.
George, I've got to ask the question, how does the word groom, how does that get applied to this? It doesn't seem like it's an appropriate word. What exactly is done to these young women?
Yeah, so according to the experts, there's a three-step process. It begins with the so-called hooks. These are young, good-looking boys between the ages of 16 and 18 who look out for girls between the ages of 12 to 15, and the idea is that either in the high school or on the streets or shopping mall, in the supermarkets and so forth, and the idea is to get their phone number, to charm them into getting their phone number. Once they get the phone number, they get passed on to the so-called predators, and these are men who generally are between 19 to 22, 23 years old, and then once they get the phone numbers, they invite these girls to parties. At the parties, there's a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. Once that is established, they are then passed on to the so-called coordinators. These are men who are, young adults to older men who wine and dine these girls, and then eventually they rope them in with gifts and charming words and so forth. And according to the experts, in all of these cities around Europe, there are, these men, sometimes these girls are kidnapped, they are taken away for years, they go missing, white vans that pop up all over the cities, and in the process they get kidnapped. And just in a few months ago, according to my report, 35 men belonging to this grooming gang, to these grooming gangs, kidnapped about 8 girls, and we see the results of that.
Well, what's behind this? I mean, is this just a prostitution ring? Is the goal to generate a lot of money from these women? Is that the goal?
Yeah, there clearly is some of that, but also within the Muslim community, as my guest there, Dr. Ella Hill mentioned, in her situation and what is happening today across Europe is these Muslim communities who view the white community, specifically white women, as trash, as second-class citizens, human beings, and easily disposable, easily used. And the idea, Gordon, is within these Muslim communities, parents teach these children from a very young age to view white people, to view white girls as immoral, as impure, and that because of their lifestyle, the way they dress, the kind of music they listen to, all the drinking and dancing that takes place, the drugs, that they need to be taught a lesson. They need to be punished for their immoral behavior. And this is indoctrinated. I mean, we've been doing stories on this for many, many years at CBN News about how this indoctrination begins at a very young age. And part of the challenge is to rewire and to reteach these children about the value of a human life, of the value of women and girls in their societies.
Well, they're creating the immoral behavior and they're creating the immoral behavior in themselves. Why are the authorities reluctant to crack down on this?
Yeah, two words, political correctness. I mean, you look at just last year, Sweden, which has, Gordon, one of the most liberal immigration policies in Europe. The chief of police of Sweden said, listen, this is ridiculous. We are dealing with a wave of migrant mafia gangs that are terrorizing from Gothenburg to Stockholm, and nobody is talking about it. We have to identify the problem, that there is a connection between immigration and Islam. There is something about the way these young men, the majority of migrants who come from these Muslim majority countries are young men, and they come into these Western societies and they are culture shocked because in their countries, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, women are completely veiled, they're completely covered. Then they come to these liberal European cities and say they see women dressed in all the ways that they do. They're very free. They can say anything, go anywhere, and they're culturally shocked. And some of them, not all of them, the experts say, begin to behave very, very badly. And the problem is these European governments just cannot bring themselves together to address the issue of immigration, talk about the connection between immigration and Islam. In fact, just a few weeks ago, the UK Parliament released a document on this whole plight of grooming gangs, and not anywhere in the document, in the report, did they mention the correlation between immigration and Islam. There was no reference to religion, that the role religion may play in amongst these grooming gangs. And this is, again, political correctness. They just don't want to talk about it because they fear of being labeled racist.
Well, what happens to women when they report the abuse?
In the case of Ella Hill, it's quite unfortunate, Gordon. What happens is that because she is white, when she reports the abuse, she is accused of being a racist. She says, you cannot point out that your attacker is an immigrant. You cannot point out that your attacker is Muslim. And then on the second hand, in her case, she gets, she gets criticized by left-wing groups like Antifa, saying, you cannot, you're white. How can you claim that you're racist? It is the whites who are being racist, and how can you claim that you're racist? And so not only does she go through this horrific situation, but then she gets ostracized, she gets criticized because of her whiteness. As she mentioned in that clip, she said each time she was being beaten, each time she was being raped, she was constantly reminded by her perpetrators that it was because of her whiteness that she was being brutally raped. It was because of the color of her skin why she was enduring these horrific acts.
Well, George, this is a shocking report, and thank you for bringing it to light. You can always get the latest on this topic, and when you download, all you have to do is download the CBN News Channel app today. But this is a horrific report, and I hope people wake up to it. This is something that absolutely needs to stop. Hello, I'm Gordon Robertson. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more encouraging videos like this one. Welcome to the 700 Club Interactive family, and God bless you.